really travel, it's wonderful to see a full house. So thank you very much for being here. My own motivation for making the film, there were several, but one of the main motivations was to be able to share visually the experience. I mean, I was in South Africa shooting a film in 2002, and somebody said, if the wars of the 20th century were fought over oil, the wars of the 21st century would be fought over water. And I was coming back, the motivation for making the film was not so much to provide answers, as to share visually the human interface with water around the world and what was going on. Because I felt at that time that the headlines that we were reading in the newspapers did not do an adequate job of communicating what it really meant, what that comment was framing, what it was trying to say. So the film itself, leads to questions more than tries to give answers. And as a format, one of the things that we've tried to do is to try, to take the film to forums where a filmmaker might not show up. So I'm thankful to Dr. Peterson for inviting me back, because I was quite surprised to get an invitation from the American Chemical Society last year to show it at the national meeting. And I think as an outcome of that, I'm again being invited by scientists to show a fairly artistic piece. So thank you for that. The second thing was, beyond going outside of our own circle of media makers to show the film, that to try and convene people in the local area wherever the film was being shown, who are interested in water, who are invested in water in some ways, to continue the conversation. So it's in that spirit that we're having this discussion. I was supposed to be here by 5 o'clock. As you saw, I got here at 6:30, so I haven't had the pleasure of actually having spoken to the gentleman here, so I'll just ask each person to just introduce themselves a little bit and tell us about their interest in water.
My name is Dr. Ed Nelson. Is that working?
Yeah. How about now? Okay. I'm a family physician, and I've been involved with medical mission trips to South India every other year since 1993. Just got back from my 10th trip, and also Ethiopia yearly since 2006. We go and provide medical care, both medical and surgical care, to the people in rural areas in South India and a rural village in Ethiopia. My involvement with water, I guess, began probably back with the early India trip, when it was clear that there was a lot of illnesses that we were seeing in the primary care setting were related to contaminated food and water. And then we went to Sandafa, Ethiopia in 2006 with the concept. I go through with an organization called Living Word Community Church, and there was this idea of adopting a village, and we were trying to enhance the quality of the life of people in Sandafa by a number of ways. One is from a medical standpoint, one was an educational standpoint, one was a standpoint from supporting the spiritual aspect of the community, and the other one is the educational and the public health standpoint. And the other was the microfinancing. When we got there, it was clear that to make an impact into the village of Sandafa, to spend a week or two in a medical camp once a year wasn't really going to make the biggest impact. But when we saw how much illness we were seeing in the primary care setting from contaminated food and water, and seeing the water supply that they had there, and how it was becoming depleted in terms of quantity of water, but also the quality of water there. And so we started the first trip, the subsequent trip we came back, and we did actually we partnered with an organization called Water Missions International out of Charleston, South Carolina, and we actually did some water testing at the boreholes, the drill holes, and also at the sites in the village. And we were able to show the water people in the community, which what they thought was clear, pure water, was totally contaminated, especially in some of the restaurants and so on downtown. So it was eye-opening for them. They were more concerned about the quantity of water than we thought was necessary, but as we investigated all this, it was clear that that was part of the problem. And about 2 years ago, we ended up raising funds, and we drilled a borehole, or a well, and which was able to supply more water from that new borehole than they could have from the other 3 or 4 wells that they had. So the quantity of water was being addressed, and then the quality of water is being addressed, because when you saw a lot of the vessels, the pots that the women were taking from the well, even if that water coming up from the well is clean and pure and not contaminated with organisms, bacteria, parasites, and so on, by the time it gets into those those containers, it's contaminated. And so by the time it gets into the mouths of the people in their homes, it's really contaminated. And so in order to minimize that process, or to counteract that, the idea of chlorination is key. And so we're in the process of providing chlorination for the village. It's been a challenge getting through some of the bureaucratic part of things, and getting the people not only in the village, but even from the federal government, letting chlorine come into the country. It's been a real challenge across the way. So we're hoping to be able to finalize, when we move back there in July, installation of the chlorination system, so that the community will have cleaner water that is less contaminated with bacteria.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Greg Foy. I'm an analytical chemist. And, first and foremost, I'm a chemist. And so I teach general chemistry, and one of the things that we focus on in general chemistry is water. Water has a very unique structure. I brought some of my toys with me. If you look at water, it seems to be one of the simplest molecules, but the 2 hydrogen atoms in white here on the end, attached to the oxygen in the center. The oxygen then has a couple of lone pairs of electrons. And so, as you all know, I'm sure, electrons are negatively charged. And so, what we have is a polar molecule. But it's not just a polar molecule. There are a lot of polar molecules out there, but it is a polar molecule that has a unique structure to it. And that structure allows it to interact with itself very nicely. If this end is negative, then this end has to be positive. And so these fit together very well. And so this is why you get all the interesting properties of water, right? I mean, there are very few substances that you can think of that exist as a solid, a liquid, and a gas, all at normal temperatures and pressures. Part of what we've experienced with getting Sanjeev here is the solid, the liquid, and the gas, right? And so this is also an aspect of water that causes a lot of problems because water is considered the universal solvent. That means that, this negative and positive part of the molecule can pull other things apart. It can surround them, it can dissolve them. And so, that's why things are in water. They dissolve. And that dissolution then allows it to pass into your body and into, any other organisms. So, there's the good and the bad of water. And the bad would be, what we've been experiencing in the film, which is, how do you clean it up? And, what are the ways in which we can provide clean water to the world's population? And so I think that leads nicely to our next.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Hines. I'm the president of the York Water Company. And the York Water Company is the oldest privately owned water company in the country. And as you can imagine, I took some umbrage to the parts of the film that discuss the problems with privatization of water. And I'm here to tell you that for the past 195 years, it's worked very well in York, Pennsylvania.